How many of you guys have any experience handling firearms? Probably varying levels, right? To start, let's take a look at this. Does this look like a good idea or a bad idea? Probably a bad idea, right? Used a comical picture, but overconfidence and negligence are big issues in firearm safety, so that's some of what we'll talk about today. A little about me. I've been an instructor for several years now. I do enjoy teaching. I like passing along that information that allow people to safely and competently move forward and enjoy firearms. Some of the things we'll talk about. The first thing is going to be the safe storage of firearms. Second will be the safe wearing of firearms. And then last, we'll talk about the cardinal rules of gun safety. So to start off, the storage, we've got a couple of different examples here. The first one is that floor safe. Those are obviously larger. You can store more firearms safely in them. These can be bolted to the floor in the right area. And because of the size and that being bolted, they're theft deterrents. On the flip side of that, it's going to be harder to move around. You may not have room in the home for it. So another option would be that smaller safe. Can't hold as many guns, but it will still store a firearm and keep it safe. And this one has a fingerprint scanner. There's a bunch of different locking mechanisms. These are just two examples. Alternatives to that would be not necessarily, enclosing the firearm, but it'll still render them safe. That first one there on the left is a chain lock. And I have an example of that. Those are they're usually available free of charge at your local law enforcement agency. There's a group called Project Child Safe, and they do typically supply those. This is one of these chain locks applied. It goes down through, this is a safe firearm, by the way, but it goes down through the slide, down through the magazine well within the handle, and then it locks down here. Comes with a set of keys. And obviously, once you apply this, you want to keep this and the keys in two separate areas so that they're not accessible. So once that goes in it and it's locked, when this slide is sent forward, it now keeps that slide from going into battery. So what that does is even if the trigger somehow gets depressed, that firing pin can't go forward and send a projectile out. So this gun is rendered safe with this chain lock. On the right, that's actually a trigger guard lock. What that does is use the same firearm. It covers, this is a trigger guard here. Trigger is within that. What that does is it encloses that area and keeps that trigger from being depressed, sending that firing pin forward. So same concept as the chain lock. It renders the gun safe so that the projectile won't be sent out of the gun. That one actually has another fingerprint scanner on it. There's a bunch of different options. These are just two. And then looking at how we actually carry a firearm, does that picture on the left look like a safe method? Probably not, right? Talked about that trigger guard just a second ago. It's exposed there, and also the gun's not really controlled. If you don't have your hand on it, it could fall out. But the biggie here is the fact that trigger guard and trigger itself are exposed, so it can get caught on clothing and actually fire, which is not a good thing. On the other side of the screen, you've got holsters, and I've got an example here. Those are safer options. So typically these, number one, they guard that trigger guard and trigger. And then two, typically they have some sort of safety mechanism that you have to defeat before the gun will come out of the holster. So this one actually has a lever that has to be pulled back before the gun will come out. So this maintains control because this goes down within your waistband. And then it doesn't move around. It won't let the gun pop out. So that's a safer method of wearing a firearm. Talking about when we actually handle the firearm, these cardinal rules of gun safety. Number one, we want to treat all firearms as loaded. We never want to take anybody's word for it. We want to make sure we double and triple check, that a firearm is either loaded or unloaded. We always want to treat them as loaded. That's just the safe method. Second, we always want to keep the muzzle pointed in a safe direction. We never want to point it at anyone or even close to pointing it at someone. Third, we want to be aware of our target and what's around it. So when you're on a range, you want to make sure it shouldn't be an issue, but we want to double check for your safety and everyone else's safety that there's not people moving around, behind, or around the targets. And then we also want to keep our finger off the trigger and outside the trigger guard until we're ready to fire. That's just an added safety measure. If your finger's outside that trigger guard, it should not go off. So to wrap up, we want to make sure that we attend a proper certified training course. The only way to gain that competency to be able to safely enjoy firearms is to, attend that training course that includes both classroom and hands-on instruction. And then we also want to remember how we store our firearms. We want to do that safely as well. Safety is our number one priority. To summarize the topics, we talked about how to safely store firearms within the home. We talked about how to safely carry firearms. And we also talked about those cardinal rules of gun safety when we're handling firearms. I did find a study. It was done by the National Violent Death Reporting System. It's an organization that gathers statistics involving firearms-related injuries and deaths. And this one was a little over a 5-year period. There was over 200 deaths of children aged 0 to 14. And that's an alarming figure, but I think we would all agree that one is too many. So if we keep in mind safety as the number one priority, then we'll avoid situations like what we see in the picture here. And if we do practice safety first, then we can enjoy firearms responsibly, like these two individuals are in competitive shooting, which is a fun hobby. So remember, safety is our number one priority. Thank you.